So, various commentary YouTubers are alleging that Parlo is no longer here, if you know what I mean. And that's obviously a really big thing to speculate about, and I definitely don't necessarily want to reinforce that notion. However, for those of you that don't know, there has been a lot going on with popular Roblox YouTuber Parlo in the past couple weeks here, and Parlo is no stranger to controversy. When you make commentary content, you're inevitably going to get people who are mad at you, who want to slander you, make videos about you. Trust me, guys, there's a lot of people who make tweets about me, and it's water under the bridge. Who cares, right? However, I understand, once you become a bigger creator, there's a lot more of that, so it can become harder to handle. However, in recent weeks, the harassment and kind of public image of Parlo has become out of hand, is what I'll say. And there's a couple reasons for that, and there was this one tweet in particular that really seemed to head off this sort of sentiment or start this whole kind of situation from what I could find. And I want to go over it with you guys, as well as Parlo's various statements regarding his channel being deleted, his alleged actions towards himself, all this sort of stuff, because there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of people spreading misinformation. So in this video, my main goal is just going to be showing you guys what Parlo has posted on his Twitter account and showing you guys what he's responded to, rather than speculating about my theories, and just giving you guys some context based on what I understand. So with that in mind, please keep in mind that everything discussed in this video is alleged. So basically, as I'm scrolling through Parlo's Twitter, which he claims that he purges every 24 hours, but some of these tweets are a week old, so I'm not quite sure how that works. However, this all kind of seemed to start when Parlo responded to a tweet from this creator. And basically, there's this creator by the name of Tanuki, I think is how you say it, and they are basically, I guess they qualify themselves as being someone who advocates for safety on the Roblox platform, which is great, and that's awesome. And Tanuki came out with this post on November 10th, and it's a long one, so I'm just going to read it to you guys, and keep in mind that everything that I'm reading is coming from Tanuki. This is not my personal opinion. For anyone in this safety space, do not donate to Parlo's GoFundMe. He's been using donations to fund random trips with blank, and everyone involved in that situation has acted completely irresponsible. Parlo, I know you hate me. I also know we made a truce. I also don't believe you're a blank. But I don't know how else to reach you at this point. It's 2:08 a.m. and I'm saying this publicly because you need to get off the live stream and step away from the Roblox community for a while. Please stop openly talking about blank and your explicit activity on a live stream to 500 people. I know you're checking Twitter, so check this. The way you and everyone in that blank behave was absurd. The whole thing turned into he said, she said gossip instead of any real safety mission. This should have stayed private. You've all turned advocacy into a circus. Now, there is some more that we're going to get into in a second here, but I want to be clear that there's kind of some back and forth regarding what this relates to. And I mean, honestly, the information isn't super clear, but to my understanding, earlier in the week, I guess Parlo, as well as some other creator, had released documents regarding a situation where they had some sort of relationship in real life, and there's allegations of misconduct that occurred, and so they both released documents, and I guess we're live streaming and talking about it and stuff like that. And it ended up being that a lot of people criticized Parlo for releasing his document, not because of his alleged experiences, but because of the way things are worded in that document, with a lot of people calling out as being inappropriate, being really graphic, just too much information for the internet. And I am the first person to understand wanting to defend yourself, but there's a very, tricky line between defending yourself and oversharing to the point where it's kind of creepy. And I feel like this document overshared. I'm not going to link the document. I'm not going to talk too much to it just because it was pretty graphic in nature and there's no point getting into that. But I believe this is what Tanuki is referencing here, was that document, that whole situation that arose. They go on to say, you've embarrassed the LGBTQIA Roblox creator space. This mess is beyond shameful. Private details should stay private from everyone. Seeing you raise money under false pretenses while taking vacations is disgusting. Your supporters were scammed. It's reckless to claim burnout and stress while you've been using those funds for blanks. I'm saying this because you clearly need to hear it, lead the community, get help, and stop broadcasting this chaos. You are destroying yourself on live streams. You are not a blank. You are a blank pest who refuses to take accountability. Being naive is an excuse when you're an adult. And yes, what I said stands. You're a pick-me. You're afraid to admit it, but you know it's true. Kids shouldn't be paying for your lifestyle. Safety advocates don't do this. Everyone in that Airbnb, Wolfgang included, which I guess is the other person who is connected to the situation, should be ashamed. Calling yourself a safety advocate while scamming your base by misleading them is a joke. I can't sit quietly anymore. I'm using my platform to tell people, don't donate. The truce is over. For the record, I don't side with anyone in this. Everyone of you is so self-hating and performative that the rest of us have to deal with the fallout as LGBTQ safety advocates trying to do real work. And this post got basically 500,000 views. So this quickly took off, and there was a lot to this. And this user, Tanuki, they linked a copy of Parlo's GoFundMe. So I guess, to my understanding, Parlo had said that he was struggling financially, and I guess he was getting false strikes on his channel or something along those lines. And so he privated a bunch of his videos, and he needed money. And so he opened a GoFundMe to pay for his, I guess, living expenses. And it says it's meant for rent, food, and monthly bills, which I'm not going to sit here and police how people spend their money, but I know for a fact, as the creator in the commentary space, and not to say that all, earnings across everybody is very similar. However, I made $1,000 last month on YouTube, and that's not to flex, but that's to say, for a creator that is so much bigger than my channel, to be making so many videos and making videos that in my opinion are pretty decently like high quality, like just regarding the editing style and like viewership kind of ratio, to be making videos that get so many views and so much interaction, and to be producing content pretty frequently, and to all of a sudden have to private your channel and then not having any money, in my opinion, it just seems kind of reckless. I'm not quite sure what happened to that money. I'm very confused. I know he's been dealing with some situations with the police and stuff, and people calling the police on him. I don't quite know. But maybe, I don't know, he's been spending money on lawyers. I have no idea. And that's just me guessing here, but I don't quite understand how your money just disappears like that, because commentary, although it can be tricky for people who are starting out, is not a niche where you don't make a lot of money. You can make a ton of money, and of course, other creators will have different amounts of money that they make per video because it has to do with your RPM, which is revenue per 1,000 views. However, my RPM is like pretty generic, and to make well over 10 is insane to me as a new channel, like someone who just started. And so I cannot imagine the kind of, money that channels like Parlo's could potentially generate if they're posting consistently. So honestly, I'm not quite sure why someone who is, makes what I would assume pretty decent money would be making GoFundMe. I feel like that stuff should be more reserved for people who are like dealing with, illnesses or homelessness and stuff like that. And a lot of people would say that he's dealing with that, but I don't know. It just seems like, on my part, I'm kind of confused. People are speculating negligence. I don't know, but it's just confusing to me. And imagine my surprise when I find out that it was only a week after he created a GoFundMe, literally begging to help pay for food and bills, that he sent me $1,000 in order to pay for my plane ticket to London. So I believe this is a document from someone involved in the situation where they are showing transactions of Parlo sending them money, which this plane ticket was not cheap, as you can see. It's almost $1,000. So that's a lot of money, especially when you're actively, using a GoFundMe, which GoFundMe, again, is intended to help people who are in crisis. So Parlo responds to this post that went absolutely viral on November 10th, and he writes, "Tanuki is openly lying. I never used the donation money for blanks. The money was transferred days after the situation. Tanuki is using an alleged blank blank situation to try and slander me and harass me once again while spreading misinformation without hearing my side." So a quick introduction here. I do find, and this is not meant to be hateful towards Parlo, but he really, really seems to enjoy using the word slander. And I think sometimes people use this word pretty freely. However, slander is a term that falls under the legal term of defamation, which basically means to knowingly and willingly spread misinformation with the intent of harming somebody's reputation as fact. So if you're saying, Pommy, guys, I know for a fact she killed 200 kittens, that could be considered defamation. However, there's two branches to that. There's libel and there's slander. Slander, you remember it as an S, so spoken word. So if I go and I say, guys, Pommy killed 200 kittens, that'd be slander. However, if I take that and I post it, that could be considered libel, because libel is typically written or published work that is defamatory. So in this situation, I would consider this libel, which is just like, I know it's a weird nitpick, but I feel like people like to throw around legal terms without really knowing what they mean. And not to say that I'm like a legal expert, however, with someone who does have some legal education, I don't quite understand why people are so quick to throw, oh, they slandered me. No, technically, I believe this would be liable. So I'm just kind of confused with the whole slander. And a lot of commentary YouTubers love to use the word slander. And I understand it's hurtful when you feel like someone's saying something that isn't true about you. However, I think it's important to recognize what the actual legal definition of this stuff is before you're throwing it around so, liberally, because it has real world implications and repercussions. So just putting that out there. But he goes ahead and he attaches these screenshots, and it says, GoFundMe, you were sending 376 pounds to your bank account, please note, blah, blah, blah. So there's that money, verification to continue receiving payouts. He's been using, and then he highlights this part, using donations to fund random trips with blanks. And something I want to clarify here is I feel like this is almost like nitpicking at the wording of this. I think what Tanuki meant to say, which this is just my interpretation, so this is not fact, this is speculation, was that, hey, if you're actively begging for donations, which is what this GoFundMe was begging for donations, while subsequently spending $1,000 on a plane ticket to meet up with somebody, it's disingenuous. And although maybe the exact dollars or pounds, euros, whatever you want to call it, the exact currency that was donated by, let's say, Bobby Boberson on GoFundMe wasn't directly used towards this plane ticket, you're still collecting currency from people under the guise that you are financially struggling while being kind of negligent with your spending and spending $1,000 on a ticket for somebody else to come meet you. So I believe that's what Tanuki was referencing here. Not that the exact specific dollar was spent on that, but that you're openly accepting donations under the guise that you are desperate, you need it, and so people are donating to you because they don't want to see you homeless, they want to support you, they enjoy your content, and genuinely they feel bad for you, and so they're donating under the guise that you are sincerely struggling, while at the same time you are allegedly spending $1,000 almost on a plane ticket. And that's what's kind of confusing to me here, and I believe that's what Tanuki was referencing. However, I feel like Parlo is almost trying to use this like wordy play, like, oh, like this is misinformation, and then he pulls out the this assault stuff, which I'm not going to speak to the validity of this. It's been argued by several different people, and it's honestly just kind of confusing. But as someone who has been assaulted, I try to believe every victim, but I think it's a tricky situation when there's like a lot of drama and internet stuff pulled into it. I feel like those kind of things need to be handled in real life, not online. Now, aside from that, this is like, honest, I'm gonna be so honest, this is so confusing. I'm like scrolling upwards to try not to get confused. But then after that, he said Tanuki's openly lying, blah, 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 blah. And he said Tanuki Alex, instead of talking to me, has publicly aligned me and slandered me as a kid scammer. Despite this not being true whatsoever, I will be consulting Tanuki Alex in Discord DMs and providing screenshots of the conversations in case she attempts to continue to lie. So again, I think a common theme with these commentary YouTubers is they like to overly share, which I understand. At the end of the day, I think Parlo, he gets upset when people lie about him like anybody would, and so I don't think that's criminal. However, I think there's times like this, especially with allegations like this, where posting on the internet is not the best thing, because no matter what you say, there are going to be people that don't believe you, but it seems like that makes them want to prove it more, which just creates this unhealthy obsession with trying to prove random strangers on the internet that you're right and they're wrong. It's just not worth it. There's people that spread misinformation about me every day. There's people that lie about me, whatever. There's no point in trying to prove to idiots that they're stupid. You know what I mean? Like, just leave it. I'm not saying Tanuki is stupid or anything like that, but that's just what I'm saying here. Like, the constant need for validation from the internet and having to prove to people that you're right and they're wrong is just very bizarre to me. Now, Parlo goes on to say Tanuki Alex is also seen making consistent jokes at the situation, titling her space to "Keep Your Pants On, Please," in reference to private situation I had to deal with that went public, discussing an extremely personal situation where I felt pressured, absolutely disgusting. Which I'm not quite sure what he's referencing here. I'm assuming this is him referencing the document that he released, which in that case, then you made it public. I'm not sure if he's referencing something else here. I don't know. But regardless, I think, in situations like this, let's not bring it to the internet. Let's not publicize all this stuff, because once you bring something to the internet, you can't take it back. It's there forever. And then I find, I'm not necessarily speaking to Parlo here, but a lot of creators will put this thing up being like, this person said this about me, guys, cancel them. And then as soon as they start getting pushback or backlash or people questioning them, they're like, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Well, no, you brought it to the internet, so now people have a right to speak on it. At the core of it, I believe this is a sensitive situation that should have never been brought to the internet. But the truth is, both parties equally chose to bring it to the internet by responding to each other, by publishing things, and so it's going to be there, and inherently there's going to be fallout from that, which is unfortunate, but that is the truth. So he attaches these screenshots, whatever, and then more about the thing, and then he puts up this post the same day, debunking this lie. The ticket and laptop were purchased before funds were directed to my account. The funds were then used to exactly what described on the GoFundMe. Ergo, this was not fraud or scamming. You have already spread misinformation in the first tweet. And again, I feel like this is just kind of like a weird wordplay. Sure. At the core of it, did you use that exact dollar to buy that plane ticket? No. However, this GoFundMe has been up, and to my understanding, you can see here, that GoFundMe was up at the same time that you were purchasing this stuff. So I'm just kind of confused, and I don't know. I'm not trying to necessarily pick apart every purchase in his banking history. Also important to note that people have different bank accounts, so to, to post these sort of screenshots, I don't necessarily feel like it proves anything, because personally I have multiple different credit cards. Like I don't just put all my stuff on the same credit card or the same debit card or whatever it may be, right? And so like this could just be some random account. That's why I'm a little bit confused by this. Like, oh, you're posting your entire transactions. That's nice. And you're ordering Uber Eats and going out to eat, which I understand people might argue, oh, well, he needs to eat. Yeah, sure, you need to eat, but I can guarantee everywhere in the world it is typically cheaper to go and purchase some groceries rather than eating out. But again, typically I wouldn't pick apart somebody's finances, but when you're, trying to get, donations from random people on the internet, I would expect that you're doing absolutely everything in real life you possibly can to, actually support yourself and to try and keep yourself out of that situation, which would mean going to a food bank, getting social resources, not ordering Uber Eats, and not going out to eat at restaurants. You know what I mean? He wrote this, I guess, under his GoFundMe. It says, "Hello, my name is Parlo, and I operate a YouTube channel calling out bad actors and covering extremely important situations on the Roblox community, oftentimes ensuring the platform is a safer place," which I want to clarify here, which this is just my opinion to clarify, but I do have like this weird, I don't know, kind of, I wouldn't call it an issue, but I don't know. A lot of commentary YouTubers I find like to advocate or portray themselves as these white knights, which I've discussed previously. And I feel like, unfortunately, that is sometimes what happens with Parlo. I think at the heart of it, he has good intentions, and I've watched him for years, so it's not like I'm a stranger to his content, right? But I find that a lot of these people like to act like white knights and saviors, and I'm gonna save all of you, and I'm so great. And I think at the heart of it, they do want to do that. However, the way that they go about doing it is often rushed. It's dramatized. It's, sensationalized for clicks and views. Like, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And usually they start with a hook, which most content creators do, including myself. That's not a crime. But the difference is I don't portray myself as being this internet white knight that's gonna save everybody. I portray myself as someone who wants to talk about a situation because I want to talk about it. You know what I mean? And what we found, at least from the woodworks of this, is as Parlo's been getting canceled, there's been people who have previously been on his channel who've been coming out being like, this was all a lie, he lied about me, which some of those people are fully lying. Like, they were totally guilty. But some of the people, including, this Tanuki person, they're saying, like, things were taken out of context, they weren't, like, it was misinformation and stuff that was misconstrued for views and likes. And unfortunately, I think the commentary space is some place where people really, really try to dramatize things and to villainize people. And, the flip-flopping between someone being a good person and a bad person is so consistent that it is so hard to follow who is friends, who is against each other, all that sort of stuff. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people in the commentary space are not doing well mentally. Which, I'm not going to villainize anybody for that, but looking for validation on the internet by getting views, by spreading dramatized situations is not the answer to your mental health issues, okay? And I'm not inherently saying that Parlo is mentally ill. However, he has personally claimed that on his own channel, so I am just, going off of what he has said and the behavior that I have observed. And the behavior that I've observed from his channel and his videos is not from somebody who is necessarily super stable. I feel like there's like a meltdown every other week on Twitter. There's constantly drama with people, which inherently when you talk about people, you will get backlash, which that is a given, right? However, if you don't want that backlash or you cannot mentally take that backlash, don't talk about people. And personally, that's one of the main reasons I don't talk about specific people on my channel for the most part, aside from this video, is that I try to not bring other people into it because I know it could cause backlash and I know it could hurt people's feelings. And that's not my intention. However, sometimes there's, conversations or things people want to talk about. And I think this is important because there's a lot of misinformation going around, which is why I'm making this video directly reading content that Parlo himself has posted. Now, in his GoFundMe bio, he goes on to say, "Recently, I've been a victim of a horrific witch hunt by a number of online individuals attempting to harass me, defame me, and ruin my life over lies. I've since been diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety and have been prescribed medication. The situation has caused immense mental distress. I do not ask for anything that you do not feel comfortable sending, but if you wish, all I kindly ask is a small donation to help me pay my expenses, food, rent, and other amenities in this horrible period of time, also with potential funds for further action I may take. Thank you so much for being here to help, Parlo." Now, another thing I want to say is, on the same wavelength of mental health concerns and stuff like that, I find it, in my opinion, which this is just my perspective, it's a little bit bizarre. Again, the oversharing, the constant oversharing, which I know you want to portray to people that this is hurting your mental health, and I understand that is the intention, but to me it comes across, why are you sharing so much personal information? Okay, you've been diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety. I'm sorry. That sucks. And that's something that's obviously, a tricky thing to navigate. I'm no stranger to being diagnosed with stuff. I am diagnosed with OCD in real life. I am diagnosed with that, but I don't use that as a crutch for every single thing. I'd be like, oh guys, you can't talk about me because I have OCD, which one of my OCD triggers is literally morality OCD, where I get worried. Am I a bad person? Am I secretly a terrible person? Am I secretly this horrible, terrible, nasty person? But I'm not going to go and spread that on the internet. Like, guys, do not make tweets about me calling me a bad person because I'm going to spiral. Who cares? My mental illness or my mental health problem is not your problem. That's why it's my problem, and that's why I deal with it. So I think it's kind of weird to kind of push this onto other people and be like, I have this really intense depression, really intense anxiety, which I'm sorry, I empathize with you, but that does not mean people need to take it easier on you. That doesn't mean that you're not accountable for things you've said. That doesn't mean that people aren't going to criticize you just because you have these mental health concerns, which it's great that you've reached out for help and you're medicated. Awesome. However, again, it's just like, I find a lot of creators, not just Parlo, will use their mental health issues or, concerns or disabilities or, whatever it might be, anything they're diagnosed with as a crutch or some sort of like cushion when they're being criticized for stuff. And I just think that's like, I don't know. I just think it's interesting. Now, he goes on to say in this next one, debunking this slide, the ticket and laptop were purchased before funds are directed, blah, blah, and he has like all his banking stuff in here. And then he says, none of the examples listed as fraudulent activity identifies the situation. Furthermore, funds are also being allocated to solicitors to deal with my current legal situation and problems, which is good. If people are lying about you, sue them. Go after them. Great. Examples of expressly forbidden fraudulent activity, breaking the law, which he's saying he didn't do, lying or being misleading about your identity as a campaign organizer or your relationship to the ultimate recipient of the funds, and then posting misleading statements in the campaign story, which I feel like this third one, I don't know, just in my opinion, I don't know. Like, if you're, again, spending money on a plane ticket during the same time that you're actively begging for money online, that to me comes across misleading and is a misleading statement to say you're financially struggling, in my opinion, if you're then going and spending thousands of dollars or like money on plane tickets and a gaming laptop and this stuff, So, but that's just my perspective. Doesn't mean that it's inherently correct. He goes on to say after that, I have been homeless for the past 10 days and have been down thousands of dollars as clearly proven with my money receipts. I have made bad financial decisions beforehand that exacerbated the situation, but that does not make the scamming whatsoever. And it's a screenshot of him saying, when you come back, am I able to use a disposable razor? I'm trying to make myself not homeless so I can go to my blank. To make myself, I don't know. I guess shave is what he wants to do. And then he says an update, which is a screenshot from his Discord server. Everyone, my dad has control of my finances. Currently, I am not putting more money in my account. I will be providing full screenshot proof that the money used from the GoFundMe was used for rent and food, and I did not scam anyone. I'm ever going to appeal to those who donated to me on my GoFundMe if they want me to donate money back to them, despite the horrific financial position I'm in right now. If you all know how I can refund people on GoFundMe, then please let me know. TLDR, I will be giving money back despite me not having scammed anyone because I want the situation to be dealt with privately with affected parties and I want to take a break. Which, again, this is where I feel like it's like kind of like weaponizing your situation. Like, despite the horrific financial position I'm in right now, I will give you your money back. Well, was that horrific financial situation in the room with us when you allegedly were buying these things? Like, that's what I'm confused about. You know what I mean? I'm confused. There's I can empathize with people who are in a bad financial situation, okay? However, he's very stuck on this. That exact money was used for this. However, it doesn't matter if it wasn't exactly used for that. The whole, point of what people are trying to say, from what I understand, is that, hey, you shouldn't be begging for money if you have disposable income to be spending on visiting people or having people visit you. You know what I mean? Like, sure, that money from the GoFundMe wasn't necessarily used for that exact thing, but that money that you spent on those things could have been used to cover your food, expenses, and rent, but it wasn't, if that makes sense. Now, in this next section, he goes on to say, made a request to refund the money back to the people who donated, and it shows screenshots of him doing that, which, again, you don't have to prove anything to anybody. I don't know how many times he got to say that, but I understand he wants people to believe and stuff like that, but I think this constant need to prove to people that he is right is not good for his mental health at all. Everyone who donated will be paid back. I'll be making a video going over how I did not use the money on the ticket, but I do take accountability for the bad financial decisions and how I affected my friends. With the fallout of this all, I confirmed this request, and he sent a screenshot of GoFundMe. He reposted that, and then blah, blah, blah. He goes, just want to clarify the comment that was made by me. This was made by Mugen, who acted on my channel manager a couple months ago, and I guess it's like a comment of this guy, which this gets into the next section here, where I guess he's accusing this guy Mugen, I don't know how you say that, this person that he willingly gave access to his channel of hacking his channel. This, again, I'm so confused. He posted, it's just like, well, we'll get to that in a second. On the 15th, he posts the screenshot from his Discord server again, where it says, I have a very well-informed accountability video coming out that is completely transparent, makes zero excuses, and highlights every situation and criticism that has been made recently. It's about 28 minutes long. It will take a couple of days, but thank you all so much for waiting to hear like my full context and hearing me out. I've spoken with many affected parties behind the scenes, and to those I haven't, I still prove that I am sorry, and that I am taking steps to change, which is great. You know, I think a lot of people are villainizing Parlo like he's the only person on the planet who's ever done a terrible thing, which I'm not giving him, you know, excuses for the way he's behaved, but there's a lot of what, like, Parlo likes to say, bad actors in the Roblox community, and I don't know why people act so shocked when someone in a position of power in a kid's game turns out to be a not great person. Like, there's a lot of not great people in this community, I'm gonna be so for real, especially from, like, just the people I've interacted with. There's a lot of insider information, which, not saying I'm, like, a, you know, someone who knows all of it, I certainly don't, but there's a lot of stuff speculating about a lot of different people that are not even on anybody's radar. It's like, oh, okay. He goes, update on the refunds on November 16th. Large problem has arisen. I have put all the money back into the GoFundMe for it to all be given back. However, the GoFundMe got taken down. I have no idea where the money is now being transferred to. GoFundMe has made no clear communication. Again, puts more screenshots, which I understand as a public figure, you feel like you owe your audience some sort of explanation, but you don't. Wait till everything is figured out, then post. This constant frantic posting, it's just like, this cannot be good for your mental health, man. Like, just take a break. And he says, the amount of misinformation being spread is insane. Wolfgang was 21, I was 20. Insane how genuine criticisms have been warped into blank allegations. And says, Noob guy saying, why did you become a blank? Parlo, I trusted you. And he says, I'm not. This isn't true at all. Wolfgang was 21, I was 20. Noob said, I thought you used the money you got from the people who donated to have blank with a blank. Which, again, why is there so much oversharing here? Also, for a 20-year-old person, I understand, you know, stuff happens and he has, I guess, mental health issues. Okay, but you're 20. You can drive. Like, this should not be your, like, no. Then he said, like, this is where it gets weirder. He responds to that tweet, says, proof, I ID verified Wolfgang. He was born March 31st, 2004. He is 13 months older than me. Anyone who says this is a case of blank is openly lying. There's a screenshot of him saying, sure, X, just make sure, though you do have ID, just to confirm you're 18 plus, hahaha, I promise I won't ever leak or share it, just with everything going on. It's totally get it if not, though. He's like, I gotcha, let me get it. Which, I'm not confused here. You said you wouldn't leak it, and then is this not leaking it? Like, that's where I'm confused. Okay, this is generally where I'm so confused. You said you're not gonna leak it, and then you put this out, and that, sure, you know, you erase these things. You black out his face and black out his name. But you're now telling everybody he lives in Arizona. Which, personally, maybe Wolfgang is sure that, I don't know. But as someone who doesn't actively watch this person, I'd never heard of this person before then. That's not meant to be rude, I just didn't know who they were. I would have no idea that Wolfgang lives in Arizona, but now me, as an external person, knows that this guy lives in Arizona. So it's like, you said, oh, I promise I won't ever leak it or share it, but that's what you just did. And it's a thing to defend yourself, which I understand the wanting to defend yourself, but just this, you know, franticness to prove to random people online that you are right and they are wrong. It's just so unhealthy, okay? You know the truth, and sometimes you just knowing the truth is enough. And you don't have to prove it to every single person to ever live that you're right and they're wrong, because at the end of the day, there will be people who never believe you, and that's on them. Then, this is where it gets spicy. On November 17th, so yesterday, or 2 days, oh my god, it's the 19th? Jump scare. Team YouTube, my channel was hijacked and hacked, and malicious user uploaded blank videos to my channel without my knowledge or consent, and this has resulted in a third strike and channel termination. Can I have help retrieving my account? It says, hi, Parlo YouTube. It looks like tests may not be appropriate for younger audiences under our community guidelines. We placed an age restriction on it. And it has blank audio and stuff. And then he says, your content and found severe repeated violations of our blank and blank policy. Because of this, we have removed your channel from YouTube. No bueno. And so he uploads these and then say his channel was hijacked and hacked, which this is, again, I feel like a misusing of words for like buzzwords and for like, you know, to make things more dramatic. The person that has allegedly done this, from what I understand, which I could be wrong, is this, he's claiming this Munjin person, or people are speculating it's this person, but this is somebody that he allegedly gave access to his channel to prior. So it's not hijacked or hacked if you willingly gave someone access to your channel and then they did something. That sucks. I'm not saying it's right, but it's not hijacked and hacked. You know what I mean? Like, they had access to it. And I guess I don't know, it goes up further up here, which honestly, this is kind of confusing. But he said at one point that he's been trying to like appeal this stuff, or was trying to get Wolfgang or this, I don't know, not Wolfgang, this other person who had access to his channel off his channel. There's so many people involved, it's so confusing, but he was trying to get their access off his channel and was trying to do the ID verification, like the verification thing, or the 2FA, whatever thing. And the issue was that his, I guess, devices were allegedly seized by the police, and so he couldn't do the 2FA stuff to get this person off his channel. Which I'm just like, why is this so messy? Which I understand, like, the franticness of working on something for years and to have it disappear, but at the end of the day, like, I don't know. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm a therapist, because I'm not. I'm just some random person on the internet who actually gives a crap what I have to say, right? But the thing that, just blows my mind is, the content creator space is so toxic. And at the end of the day, going into it, and as someone who has just started, which I'm not going to act like I'm a pro because I'm not, but as someone who's just started, I knew going into this that it was going to be toxic, and I knew that I'd have to have thick skin, and I did things just from the very beginning to protect myself. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, I'm so right and you guys need to learn from me, but this is just what I'm saying. Like, for anybody who wants to go into content, I'm never the first person to read my comment section. I always have my channel manager read the comments first, because I don't need to see people telling me to off myself. I don't need to see people, being mean or nasty or saying that they hope I get hit by a bus. Like, I don't need to read that. I don't need to store that kind of rhetoric in my head. I have other things to worry about. That's not one of it, right? And I know it's easy to say this, but at the end of the day, you have to remember that this is just all online. I understand there's been some IRL stuff that's happened because I guess his address got leaked and all this sort of stuff. And so I know it's a little bit more complicated than just ignore it. However, I feel like the constant interacting with it, the constant interacting with trolls, the constant, just addiction, for lack of better terms, to proving that you were innocent or proving what you believe is your innocence is just so unhealthy and does not help to contribute to all the drama. Because at the end of the day, the more you interact with this stuff, the more people are going to feed into it, the more drama that's going to get stirred up, the more allegations that are going to rise, because people realize that by making things up about you, you become enraged by that and you become upset about it, rightfully so, right? Like anybody would, like any normal human would. But instead of, dealing with it behind the scenes, you publish it constantly. You're constantly publishing videos and you're constantly saying, this person defamed me and this person slandered me and this person blah, blah, blah. And I understand, again, at the end of the day, yeah, that stuff can sometimes be defamation, and yeah, it can be hurtful, and yes, it can be incorrect and misleading and all those words, right? However, the difference is you need to handle that with the proper authorities. Publishing a video, like a hit piece on somebody, is not going to fix the problem. And I know that's what, people might think is like the right thing to do, is to bring awareness. And the advertiser said, I'm just trying to bring awareness to this issue and that this person's a horrible person. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't help. There's a saying that I really do firmly believe in that says you cannot be canceled unless you allow yourself to be canceled. And it's true. You could have everybody on the internet gang up on you and say, you're terrible, you're terrible, you're terrible. But if you do not acknowledge it, it does not exist in your head and therefore does not exist on your channel. You limit your comments, you remove hateful stuff, and you just don't acknowledge it. The second you acknowledge things, especially if they're untruthful, is the second that you give other people power. And that's why on my channel, when people lie about me on Twitter, or people say hurtful things about me on Twitter, or, massive content creators be like, oh my God, I hate this girl because she does this, 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 and this, and I never did it. I just don't interact with it because I don't feel the need to defend myself against stuff that is so obviously fake. And I understand, allegations of this severity that are often thrown at Parlo, that can be difficult to handle and be like, wow, I don't want people thinking this because this is life-ruining allegations, and I understand that. But, with the allegations being as serious as they are, spend your time and energy making videos to pay for a lawyer to go after these people, because at the end of the day, social accountability can only go so far, and I feel like legal accountability is what people need when they're actively spreading misinformation about you. And holding people accountable by the full extent of the law rather than trying to crucify them online, because he characterizes what happened to him as a witch hunt, which I don't disagree with, but he then actively encourages other people to witch hunt other people. And so it's like, you dish it out, but then when you get it back, it's like, you know what I mean? I don't think it's right to be getting it back. I don't think anybody should be getting witch hunt. But at the same time, when, from my perspective, the majority of your channel is calling people out and, encouraging people to witch hunt people and, saying this person's terrible, name to be removed, and this is why, and you list all these reasons, and then someone turns around and does that to you, and, knowingly, which we've seen some stuff come out from other creators that, allegedly, there's a lot of misinformation that is spread among commentary YouTubers, which is no shock to me because I've seen it firsthand. However, when you knowingly, produce content that maybe has a lot of truth to it, but then some misinformation or some embellishments or some stuff like that, and then someone does it to you, you can't be upset because you allegedly did the same thing. And it's just the whole situation, the whole kind of commentary space can be very hypocritical. And I'm not demonizing Parlo because I think there's a lot of stuff that he's dealt with that isn't fair and he shouldn't have had to deal with. However, you know, when you're part of a space that actively works to cancel people and to take people down and to destroy people's reputation, is inevitable that's going to happen to you. And that's why on my channel, at least, I try to stick more towards game commentary and community commentary rather than this person by the name of blah 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 Bobby Boberson is a terrible person and here's why. Because there's just no point in spending your brain power trying to constantly bring individuals down. Like bringing or pointing out, you know, issues with games or Roblox as a whole or like certain communities, you know, I think that's good. But again, when you point out specific people, especially when those people are pretty active on social media, to not expect to get some sort of harassment or feedback back or some, you know, pushback, I think would be, you know, naive. It doesn't mean it's right, but that is the truth of commentary content, that whatever you say will always be taken out of context, no matter how nicely you word it, and at the end of the day, you have to be ready to defend absolutely everything you say in a video. But regardless, I think at the end of the day, this is a situation where, you know, mental health is obviously a big player here, and I think that although it doesn't relinquish Parlo from accountability, I think there is a lot of misinformation going around, and I would have really liked to see his response so I could better understand the situation, understand his perspective, because I think, again, there's a lot of misinformation, and I don't want to be actively believing misinformation. However, you know, he went on a live stream, I guess, the other day and was saying, like, there's going to be a lot of blood in other people's hands or something to that, you know, effect, which alluded to a lot of people that Parlo was contemplating something, which is obviously not okay. And I sincerely hope that he takes a break from the internet, not because I don't think he has a spot in the commentary community, but because he obviously needs a break. Everybody needs a break at some point, and it's unfortunate when people are pushed this limit, and trolls online recognize that they're pushed to a limit where they are pretty, you know, fragile and easy to upset. And, you know, especially when dealing with, you know, anxiety and depression, you're in a situation where, according to him, he's been homeless for 10 days. That's a very vulnerable situation to be in. I think it's unfortunate that some trolls and internet personalities or whatever are taking this as a chance to further defame him or to further spread narratives that maybe aren't fully true but are rooted in truth and stuff like that. I think it's unfortunate. At the end of the day, I think Parlo needs to take a break from the internet. I don't know if commentary niche is for him, maybe making gaming content. If he, you know, at the end of the day, he obviously loves creating content, but maybe the drama content just isn't the right thing for him when he's dealing with mental health concerns. But regardless, let me know your thoughts in this in the comment section below. Please be mindful of what you say. And with that in mind, I just want to go over like everything Parlo said on Twitter regarding this situation and kind of just like the multiple sides to it, because there's a lot of stuff going on right now. And I purposefully didn't address, you know, random allegations or random misinformation. You guys always say, oh, Palmy, you forgot this part. No, I didn't. I just didn't want to talk about it, babe. I just didn't want to talk about it. So if there's more information that comes out or he makes a statement on his Twitter or something along those lines, I don't know, I'll be the first to let you guys know. But with that in mind, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.